What glamorized career path is actually a complete nightmare? Chef? Long hours. Shitty environment. Nothing is ever good enough. I have a friend who's a very successful chef. He always told me, if you love cooking, just cook for friends. My so is an attorney and isn't loving life right now. She says, you know how you did term papers in college? Well, I do term papers every day. All day. Endlessly. I don't practice law anymore. But when I did, I mostly did criminal defense and occasional civil cases. Almost all the attorneys I knew all had great professional lives and personal lives comprised of utter shit. Alcohol abuse was rampant. Drug use was frequent. I knew attorneys who had pharmacy drawers in their office that they consulted when they needed a specific remedy. I knew a public defender who dropped dead of a massive heart attack as he was leaving for court. One attorney I knew said he loved going to new restaurants because he and his wife didn't have sex anymore, and that was his only real passion now. And I'm sure there are some attorneys who love their job. I'm sure there are many who are satisfied, but glamorous. Not in my experience. Veterinarian. Insanely competitive schooling that crippled you with debt. With a depressing debt-income ratio after graduation. Most of your patients don't like you. And most of the owners think you're getting rich upselling them unnecessary services when their dogs has exploding eyeball cancer can be cured with raw organic exotic meats, CBD, coconut oil. But you're withholding that information because you're in bed with big kibble. High stress. Stagnant wages. Long hours. Shit holiday leave. Rampant depression. Lost count of how many colleagues have committed suicide. Sometimes tempted to join them, monsieur. Please don't join them. I appreciate our pets' vets so much and would be heartbroken if I found out they hurt themselves. Till all career paths appear to be nightmares. The 40-hour work week is soul-shattering bullshit. Society can do better. Flight attendant. The travel would be amazing. But let's face it, you're a glorified waitress working in a cramped aluminium tube. Edit because I said steel tube and turns out I'm dumb AF. The worst part? In other customer service jobs, the problem customers eventually leave, either of their own volition or by being so over the top they get kicked out. Flight attendants are stuck with the jerks. Radio announcer. Like a lot of other jobs in the entertainment industry, it's full-time work for part-time pay. Second jobs are common. Your pizza delivery guy just may be your favorite morning show host. At least, that's how the morning guy at my station made ends meet, until he was laid off in the last round of cutbacks. Now we're a hybrid station, which is the preferred business model these days. That's a fancy way of saying one person does everything while you run a ton of syndicated programs. 12-hour days of minimum wage. Yes, on air for a few years. Minimum wage only since there's a ton of radio and television journalism graduates wanting your position who would do it for free. Political staffer. Most jobs in politics pay very little money and require you to work 80+ hours a week for a boss who is guaranteed to have a gigantic ego. You also have to look for a new job after every election day. Also, there's a huge brain drain. If you're a legislative staffer for a few years on Capitol Hill, a lobbying firm will double or triple your salary and the money is too nice to ignore once you start thinking about having a family. So, the best people leave through the revolving door. Those that stick it out and make it into management and leadership are either extremely ideologically driven, too burned out to move, suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, or petty tyrants. I've started working in television from a too young an age. It was amazing to witness all the behind-the-scenes stuff. But the reality is that these days you just can't make enough money from performing on TV. Let alone the deprivation of creative freedom. Which is what got my show cancelled, I think. During her first seasons as the star of Law and Order SVU, Mariska Hargitay could only afford a rat-infested apartment with exposed pipes in NYC. I don't know if nightmare is the word, But my wife has finally reached her lifelong goal of becoming a zookeeper at one of the top zoos in the US. She is very happy to have the opportunity to hand food to otters, have reindeer eat out of her hand, and brush okapi. However, she took on tens of thousands of dollars in student loans and did months of unpaid work at the zoo to get the job, which is seasonal, requiring she be off 2 months a year. She gets up at 4 a.m. and does farmhand-style physical labor for 8 hours a day for about $9 an hour, with no benefits. I am thrilled that she reached her goal, and I am happy that she is happy, but I am pretty disenfranchised with the whole thing. Former animal care guy, did some zoo work but more sanctuary and wildlife rehab work. The animals are rewarding, but for all the effort it takes just to get your foot in the door is crazy and the pay is not livable. At the last place I worked I also had horrible bosses. Sure, I could tell they cared about animals, but they had absolutely no people or management skills. I still don't understand how they got their current positions. I left the field, and while I miss the animals, I don't see myself going back because I like being able to buy things like food and toilet paper. Having the holidays off and not having to fight tooth and nail for a day off is nice too. Modeling, too competitive and not enough food. Also, you will have to deal with a lot of fake people who took off of the ground too much. Farming on a large scale. I was living in debt up to my ass. $500,000, $1 mil depending on the time of year. Haggling for every input, land, fertilizer, seed, equipment, at the mercy of the weather, and got to watch the commodity markets kick me in the nuts every business day. The real cherry on top was everyone thinking you are trying to kill them with GMOs and copious amounts of chemicals that we don't use. Not to mention farms are passed down through generations, so you've got a bunch of dead and living ancestors watching your every move. Oh, and a lot of farmers work a second full-time job for the health insurance. There's a reason farm suicides are high and farm accidents and accidents are higher. There's a million young rural FFA kids that would give their left leg for a chance to farm us here. Lots of people don't know how many farmers have a full-time job in addition to their full-time farms so that their family can have some stability and they can subsidize, growing the food we eat. Most career paths, glamorized or not, can be a nightmare if you have a shitlord for a boss. A good boss will make a crappy job manageable. A bad boss will make the best job in the world miserable. The video game industry. A lot of kids and teens want in it so bad because I grew up playing games blah blah blah. They take me to another world blah blah blah. Then you become an adult and learn that it's all math and physics. And making a video game has nothing to do with what you experienced growing up. It's all black screens of code, polygons, and being criticized for your work. What's worse, if you make games you probably never have the time to play them anymore. The gaming industry is notorious for implementing 60 to 80-hour work weeks. Even worse, depending on what company you work for, you may never have stable work. You finish a project and then the company tells you, we don't have another project for your particular skill set. Then you gotta look for more work. And if all that wasn't bad enough, you'll probably never work on a game you want to work on. All those big, fancy games and indie darling on Steam are a very small fraction of what exists. Barbie's Horse Adventure? Those people got degrees and were inspired by the same games as you. Crappy Candy Crush knockoffs. Same degree and inspiration. Stupid tabletop games that you only see in the family section at Walmart. Those also utilize game designers, programmers. Don't get into video games because you like video games. Get into video games because you're passionate about math and science. One thing you missed: if you do get into it, you'll likely lose the passion for playing them, because they're your day job, not an escape from it anymore. My mate used to love board games. Note the phrase "used to." Then he opened a game store and they lost the novelty. Anytime he went to play one, he'd be looking at the board and thinking, must do that tomorrow, or, oh Christ, I knew I forgot something. Killed his entire passion for it. For all of you smart kids with advanced degree from top 50 colleges, don't go into consulting. You can do better. Find a line of work that is not as soul-sucking and energy-draining. Those frequent flyer miles in free hotels, whining and dining in glamorous suits are just a smokescreen to cover up the misery from constant traveling. Networking, guaranteed overtime and no weekends are not worth it. Many people do it as a stepping stone to a real career, which is smart. Staying in consultancy for 5+ years will likely turn your life upside down. I was one of those smart kids. I had planned to do it short-term out of college before going to a master's, but figured if I liked it I'd be open to staying. I'd sum it up as fun at first because you're probably consulting on something you find interesting. But it gets worse over time. You'll probably be good at it because it's interesting and you're smart. People will recognize you're good at it and thank you for it by giving you more work to do. We want to give you more responsibility, they'll say, as if it's a promotion. But at least it's interesting enough work. If you're really good at it, people will recognize it by pumping up your ego too in order to get on your good side. This was actually a good thing for me in hindsight. I needed some more confidence in my ability coming out of college. But there were times I'd think back to some interaction and realize I'd been a real arrogant prick. The work doesn't stop, though. After a while you'll learn that if you really want the big bucks, you'll spend more of your time finding people with money and trying to convince them you're really smart and that they should give you money for that. If you succeed in that, you'll get to pass the actual work on to someone else while you spend more time doing the last step. Now your company man, woman in your life revolves around building the company and getting more projects instead of building a good life with that cash they're paying you. I was really happy when I turned in my resignation to go to grad school. Edit. Formatting and some extra thoughts I had about it. Judging by this thread, all careers, also being unemployed, or alive. I mean, come to think of it, I've never had a dead person actually tell me it sucks being dead. Investment banking. People talk about the fancy plane rides, expensive dinners, wild parties with your colleagues or a client. The reality of it is you're never truly off work. Always on call like a surgeon. Works weeks are usually 60 to 100 hours and can be brutal if one follows another. It's really more like working from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. in office and then get home to work another bit and have any given presentation ready stat. I've gone all-nighters followed by client meetings where all I have time for is a quick shower and a 7-Eleven coffee. Most people know it sucks for a while. The goal is to endure the shit years for great pay to pay off student loans. Then get a better job that pays even better. If you work for 5 years as an investment banker, your resume is already stronger than 99% of the applicants to most jobs. It's not a path I'd take, but a few years in investment banking, even without moving up the ladder, will set you up in your late 20s with no debt, very high pay, freedom, and an abundance of opportunities. Again, this is only after approximately 5 years of hell. As someone who's going to graduate university in a year or two, what I'm getting from this thread is that employment is awful. Unemployment is awful. And I should consider a career in being dead. Let's start our own corporation then. Dead Corp. Or something.